Good morning. Today I want to talk to you about sustaining media. And that means I'm going to talk to you about business, what's wrong with the business of media and how we can fix it, and really why you should care. I'm going to be talking about written journalism mostly, magazines like this, and this, and this, and even this, and that. Newspapers as well, like that, and websites, like the Huffington Post, which now has 30 million visitors a month. And super blogs, by which I mean blogs which have staffs of editors and writers working for them. TV can take care of itself. TV has its own problems. I can't fix TV this morning. So I want to begin this morning by telling you a story about two gentlemen, Joseph Addison and Sir Richard Steele, who were young men about town in early 18th century London. They founded the world's first magazine called The Tatler, and a few years later, The Spectator. And the modes of business they created to support these two publications are ones that you would recognize. They came up with an idea called subscription. They charged a penny a day to read The Spectator, or a guinea to go and read 555 issues a year. And Addison said what he wanted to do with The Spectator. He said he wanted to enliven morality with wit and to temper wit with morality, to bring philosophy out of closet schools and colleges, and to dwell in clubs and assemblies, in tea tables and coffee houses. Or in a more candid moment, as he confessed to Steele, more plainly, I propose to tell these gentlemen, the new middle class, what to think. So, there were subscriptions, and he had advertising with the audience he created by selling it. Addison and Steele went and sold ideas like medicines. It was an imperfect system. It didn't work great. Of the 3,000 people whom he gave as subscriptions, most people read it as freeloaders. And of course, it didn't work very well as advertising, because advertisers didn't know who they were reaching or how it affected buying decisions. But for 300 years, it worked. For 300 years, publications informed, instructed, diverted, and delighted. And in turn, it sustained journalism. And that matters because journalism should matter to the people in the audience. It matters because journals have been for 300 years our single most important exchange in the free marketplace of ideas. And if you didn't think about it that way, here's another way to think about why it matters so much. Journalism matters because it tells the truth. Here's a quotation by Jay Rosen, who teaches at NYU. Power-seeking and truth-telling are different behaviors, and this is what creates the difference between politics and journalism. Journalism matters because it is our public institution that tells us the truth. But the net changed all of that. The web overthrew that. The web overthrew traditional media. And it did so because it taught the people who are sitting here and everyone else in the world that they could read journalism for free and they could link to stories without any charge. And it also changed the way advertising worked. Advertising moved from what we call in our industry banner advertising, display advertising, those pictures that you see in publications. It moved instead to the keyword advertising you see on sites like Google. It gave people a more efficient way to advertise. And both parties spent less. And this, as a consequence, it means that traditional media is dying. So here's some figures. Traditional newspaper ad revenue has dropped 25% a year for the last 3 years. And newspaper circulation in the same period has dropped 17%. Magazine advertising has dropped 25% just last year. And 13,500 US journalists were fired in the last 3 years out of a total population of 55,000. And if you're asking yourselves, is that unsustainable? Well, the answer is, it very much is. So, the news has been dolorous for a decade now. It's been getting extremely bad. The Sun-Times Media, which publishes 58 magazines in the United States and newspapers, bankrupt. The Philadelphia Newspapers Group, which publishes about 30 on the Eastern Seaboard, also broke. Portfolio magazine, which Condé Nast lavished $100 million on its launch, has gone bust. And Domino magazine, also gone. Actually, I don't care about Domino magazine. Good riddance. So what's going to happen? So here's a quotation. Round and round it goes with the people committed to saving newspapers demanding to know if the old model's broken, what will work in its place? And the answer from Clay Shirky, the author of Here Comes Everyone, is nothing. Nothing will work. Clay Shirky is saying that there is no conceivable business model that will fix the business of publishing. Now, there is a strong and a weak formulation of what this means. Clay Shirky is perhaps the best proponent of the gentler version. The gentler version says something that we don't need newspapers, we don't need publication. What we need is journalism. And Clay thinks that the institutions that supported him, endowments, grants, and universities will support journalism. The more aggressive formulation goes like this. This is from Dave Weiner, the inventor of RSS, which are the feeds that feed the internet. The sources will fill in where we used to need journalists. Everyone is now a journalist. So this theory goes like this, that if amateurs, Shirky, and sources, Weiner, they'll become part of a decentralized media. Weiner, again, distributed by excitable 14-year-olds. So, this is wrong. I don't believe this for a second. And I'll tell you why not. Shirky and Weiner have confused the means of production and the means of distribution in publishing as the key comparative advantage of my industry, of journalism. And I don't believe that's true. I believe the comparative advantage of media is this. I believe it's people and culture. I think it's people like me. Because good journalism is an incredibly expensive collaborative process. It requires an elaborate infrastructure. Designing a magazine requires an infrastructure. Developing an audience that you can sell to advertisers requires an infrastructure. And selling that advertising also requires an infrastructure. And all these infrastructures only exist inside complex organizations that are mostly businesses. So, some of these infrastructures will have to be reinvented for the new age. Others, however, mainly editorial, I am confident are doing well, are great. And I'll tell you why I'm confident. Because 32 million Americans read journals, newspapers, magazines on the web every day. And that number is simply increasing. 14 million people read the New York Times alone every day. Now, people will tell you that people like myself, journalists, editors, and publishers, we don't know what we're doing. But the truth is, smart editors and publishers do have an idea. There's an emerging consensus. And here's what it is. Readers will have to begin to pay more. Editors will have to cut further into their existing editorial departments. And they're going to have to work very differently. And publishers and media buyers, the people who buy advertising, are going to have new technologies to be more efficient. So here is my prescription for how to save media. Publishers need to publish on as many platforms as make economic sense. That would include print, it would include the web, but it will also include the emerging world of iPad tablets, iPhones, Google Android, whatever makes sense. There needs to be some paid editorial, content that you will pay for. And let me define briefly what we have learned readers will pay for. Readers will pay for content that is uniquely smart. They will pay for content that has a unique mission that can be found nowhere else. Readers will also pay for content that helps them make a purchasing decision, no matter how distant that decision is, buying a product, buying a stock, choosing the future strategic direction of their company, and it also needs to be well designed. But news turns out to be a commodity with a declining value relative to time, and you cannot charge for it. News and opinion must be offered for free to the gods of the news aggregators like Google News. You can't earn any money through it except by advertising. There must be consistency of pricing across the publishing platforms upon which publishers work, by which I mean that a piece of editorial, a magazine story that one reader pays for in one context, usually print, can't be found for free somewhere else on a website. We must erect paywalls to go and protect our paid content. Editorial departments must get much smaller, and they begin to work with experts and with the people in this room, with audiences. This is going to be inordinately hard for most journalists to accept, and I think in many cases nothing will convince them that the world has changed but the termination of their own jobs and the closing of their own publications. Publications are going to get much smaller. The paid circulations are going to get smaller and smaller. 5 years ago, Technology Review, which had a print circulation of 350,000 readers, today only has 200,000, but we have 2.6 million people reading us around the world for free content. That larger but more engaged audience, we need to learn much more about them. And we need a whole variety of new tools to do this. It will surprise the people in the room, but though we know a lot about who pays for magazines, we know almost nothing about the people who visit websites on a daily basis. And finally, we need to create advertising that is actually useful to readers. By and large, people say they hate advertising, but they don't hate the advertising that they don't like. They hate the advertising that is irrelevant to them. That's why keyword advertising, those keywords that appear in the margin when you do a Google search, is so attractive to both readers and advertisers because it's useful. So I've written this up in a great deal of specifics. Please go to my website if you like and read How to Save Media, and I can go into more detail there. Things change or die, including much cherished institutions like the New York Times. There is going to be a terrible clearing in the media industry. Most people who are journalists today will not be journalists in 5 years, and scores of publications are going to close their doors. But we do know how to sustain media, and anyone who tells you that we do not is mistaken. Thank you very much for listening. Please write to me at jpontin@mit.edu, and I'll answer any further questions you have. Thank you.